got me, Gary? You got me, Dan? You in there?
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to episode 22 of True Talks Live. I cannot believe we've done 21 episodes before this. For those of you that are just joined for the first time, the goal of this live stream talk show is to provide you and project managers with the new perspectives of project management in a format that's both entertaining, or we hope it's entertaining, and also informative. Tonight's show is being recorded as previous episodes and will be available later on YouTube Live, and we'll send out that link. My name is Harry Zolkauer, and I am your MC for tonight, sitting in for Beth May. So True Talks Live is sponsored by PMI of Southern Maryland and also PMI of Washington, D.C. Our director of communications is Marta Lavie, and our producer is Dan Stay. Tonight, our topic is on trends in the profession, which I'm really excited to hear what this conversation is going to turn to. Just looking back in the 15 plus years that I've been a project manager, I've seen quite a few changes over the years in the profession of project management. A lot of things have happened. It's been really kind of an evolution, or maybe it's best to describe it as a revolution, in two major areas. One is PMI's recognition of Agile as an important framework for managing projects. And I must say that the other one is the recent phenomena of artificial intelligence with the beginning of ChatGPT that's happened just recently, and the impact it's had in our profession. Tonight, we're going to explore how these trends and other trends will carry forward into 2024 and beyond. Our host is always somebody who is setting the trends in our profession. That's Kendall Lott, and we're excited to have him back on the show. Kendall is the immediate president of PMI of Washington, D.C. He is also the CEO and president of Empower Strategies, and he's also the chairman of the board and co-founder of the nonprofit organization Project Management for Change. They have a big event coming up on Saturday, which is the day of service. Maybe Kendall will talk a little bit more about that. He also hosts the podcast called PM Point of View. Kendall's guest tonight, we're very excited to have her, is Karla Eidem. Karla is the managing director for PMI's North American region, and she has this strategic mindset and dedication to the community. So we're really excited to have her as our special guest for tonight. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, Kendall.
Oh, Harry, hang on there for a second there. Thanks for having me on tonight again. I think I'm sitting a little too close to the camera here. Dan's going to start yelling at me here in a second, but luckily the audience won't hear it because he'll just yell in my ear here, I guess. But you said some fun stuff there. So welcome sitting in the chair for Beth. Beth, by the way, is out volunteering and doing other effective things. And preparing, Beth is the director of the PM Day of Service that will be happening on Saturday. And I would love to talk about it, but there's no point in marketing it because it's closed now. You've had all year to try and sign up and show that you were a valuable PM in your community working with nonprofits. But guess what? The day after it closes, Saturday night, they start thinking about next year. They start the hot wash, they start the lessons learned, and the planning kicks off. So you have plenty of time to be in on this next year, get nonprofits in front of us next year, and to also help find some corporate support for this next year. Harry's also been a key player in a lot of this, but Beth is a superstar project management volunteer, which is part of the progress of the profession. So we're in the right space tonight with that. So I want to thank both Harry and Beth for their work, both in PM Day of Service, as well as their support through these chapters, the Southern Maryland chapter, for example, with this production tonight. And then one correction, you were right, Harry, you were so right. I am the immediate past president. My second set of terms is over, and they're all up and running and doing new things over at the Project Management Institute of Washington, D.C. And any of you out there who are from that chapter, welcome as well. So I am excited by that. To the point then, I think for tonight, as we get ready to bring Karla on, is that we've had this question, are we, with all the changes that have happened, are we growing? Are we slowing? Are we stagnating? Those market forces, this whole AI could be the killer app of PMs, maybe, or it's a killer app that we get to use now, right? So it's probably only threatening if you're a check mark checker person, but if you're doing some good project management, you're probably safe, right? So one of the best parts is I think that the reports of our profession's death are highly exaggerated. And Karla's here going to tell us some true talk about this. She's going to dish some real true talk on it. So with that, I want to bring up Karla because I got a chance to talk to her before, and I want to know more as you do. Well, I'm wearing blue. It looks like you're wearing pink. We're going to keep everybody's eyes going today and this back and forth here. Karla, welcome. Good evening.
Thank you so much for having me. I know we should have coordinated our outfits tonight.
So you're going to be out on the speakers tour. Actually, Dan, I'm not sure if everyone can hear as well. I'm having a little trouble hearing her. I'm not sure if that's something I can control or not. But at any rate, I hope everybody can hear, and that we're going out over the airwaves well. But Karla, before I get you to spill the tea on where we're going, because you've got all the inside scoop, although I think you're probably representing a lot of published information. As they heard, you are with the PMI mothership. You're up there with the big dogs, but I am interested just to give us just a little bio for everyone. What made you go into project management itself? Not PMI per se, but just like project management. What's the hook for you? Because the profession must have been going somewhere to start pulling you in like a magnet. What happened?
I think my story is not even unique. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of accidental project managers or those that are transitioning to project management. So this happened way back in 2005. I started in operations, and I was in operations for 5 years. And then I started thinking, maybe I should hone a different set of skills. And what else could I be doing? And so I looked into the market, and at this time I was still in the Philippines. I was born and raised in the Philippines and started my project management career in the Philippines. And then I saw a job that says project manager, and looking at the job description, I thought maybe I could do that. And luckily, I did get a job with HSBC. It's a global bank, but it was based in the Philippines. And that's when I started my project management career and went on for a few more years, Asia Pacific, into Latin America.
Well, you said something in there that just triggered me to think about something that I don't think we've ever talked about on the show, and we may not be able to tonight. But I would be intrigued to know what causes people to join, because there's a lot of professions you can join, and a lot of us, wherever we are in our careers, can look out and say, oh, that one seems to make more money, or that's a way to do something. There's a lot of choices still, and yet we choose this, or some of us have chosen this. And so I'm always wondering, what was the hook? What made you do it? When you said, well, maybe I can do that, but there was probably a lot of things that you could have said, maybe I can do that too, right? That would have fit.
Right.
I'm wondering if PMI, it's not just the direction of the profession, but where have we come from? Like, what causes us to think this would be mildly interesting for that? What is our DNA that allows us to be good, right? To be a good match. That would be an interesting question to me. I don't know what made us do this. I want to survey. Harry, this is part of the chapter's job. Let's go find out more about our membership. Why do people bother? That would be interesting. What dragged them in here? So, having said that, as I said, you're going to spill the tea. You're going to give us the deets. We've got a couple of things to talk about in the trends of the profession. PMI has done studies on this, published stuff on it, and I know you guys are involved in talking with companies and governments about all of this. So one of the first things that I think we need to hit is the direction of the talent gap, because I'm seeing all sorts of demands. One way to know if you're going to have a job is your industry growing, but are the industries you're supporting growing? And so where are we at on the role of PMs looking forward? What do you got for that? What are you guys finding out?
Yeah, the quickest way to find out if there are jobs is just to look it up, right? Project manager, and then you'll see all these openings. But thank you for that, Kendall. In 2021, actually, PMI released the PMI Talent Gap report, and that's where we share that we were anticipating that about 25 million new project professionals will be needed by 2030. So that's about 2.3 million project professionals to enter into the profession just to close the talent gap. But what is really driving that demand? It's attributed to the increased jobs requiring project management skills. And that in some countries it might be due to growth, but in North America, we are seeing that there's a high workforce retirement rate in the horizon. And this demand presents an opportunity for our profession to really reach into new project professionals or aspiring or transitioning project professionals and those that don't even know yet about project management. Kind of similar to my story earlier. I didn't even know about project management, but I was looking to pivot and then I found it. And maybe to answer your question a little bit on what was the hook, maybe it was the fact that it was showing in the job description of project management, the ability to coordinate tasks against goals and work with people. And those were the two things that hit me. And I thought, I really like that actually. And I think I can do it. So maybe you can add that to your survey.
Yeah.
But this talent.
Go ahead.
No, but I was just going to add that, this talent gap that we have, it just demonstrates how critical projects are in today's world. And you see that in many organizations because we're transforming, organizational goals. How do you even reach new heights? And who will be leading these initiatives? And of course, these will be instrumental in improving not just the organizations, but our world. So we need more project professionals to help drive meaningful change. But I think the key thing to note there is that this global demand for project management talent, that's unlikely to be filled unless organizations promote a culture of continual learning. And I think that is something that is true for us in the profession where we need to keep upskilling and reskilling. But the organizations need to back that up and reimagine their capability building within their organization. One thing I wanted to call out.
Yeah, can you expand on that a little bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's not just the fact that we need more project managers, but we also need more project managers that have the right skills, right? That's why we have the talent triangle. We have, you need to have the right balance between business acumen and power skills and ways of working or the technical skills. And to enter into the profession, it won't just be enough that you have the experience. You need to continue to sharpen the tools and to add tools to your bucket so that you can continue to solve problems for the organization that you're with.
Yeah, I heard three things in there that I wonder if our audience picked up on that as well. One is that you call it a talent gap. It's not a body count, head count gap. It's not we don't have enough PMs, although that was the first indicator. It's the ability for PMs to perform, the richness, not just the reach of our PMs, but the richness of the PMs that are in place, people performing these functions. I think I see that in organizations. I can see how that could be ongoing because it's tied to something else I think you said that was really, really important. Hence, even some of the work that I've done where I feel we're really about change when we can be. I mean, at a minimum, we're converting inputs to outputs through the work we do with others. But projects are really very often about causing something to be different, not just the production of things. And so I think this sense of change, we know that continues to happen increasingly fast. We all know that. I've said it for years and even faster now with tools. But as organizations grow and complexity continues, I think this ability to have the PM skill set. So I liked what you said. It wasn't a PM shortage. It was a talent gap. And I think that's really, really important because I think it is around change. One of the other things that I noted was I went out and poked around, using my AI chatbot to help, my chat support co-pilots, to ask what are the growing professions. And I was intrigued by the fact that when you ask it by jobs or professions in that way, project management does not come up in the top ones in any number of different searches that I did. And part of it's probably how it's phrased and what we're looking at. And I thought, well, that's interesting, but there's many projects that can grow and you've got to be careful where you're getting your resources. But then I went back and I looked at 3 different searches and I found out that over half of all of what they identified are things we would recognize as, well, yeah, but you have a project manager in there. When they're talking about healthcare, when they're talking about information management, when they're talking about software, when they're talking about security, when they're talking about construction, right? You're like, oh yeah, they didn't call it PM, but we all know that we're there. And then top that off with what you added, that it's about organizations being willing to help people learn and grow. I think that's going to be important for us in terms of the richness of the talent gap. So I appreciate what you're saying. There was a lot embedded in there. And PMI is on top of this, presumably helping us through our chapters, through the many books and learnings, or are there more tests coming? What are we doing here? I don't want you to get into strategy. We'll talk about that later. But
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I just want to touch on what you said there, Kendall, because you're absolutely right. It's the project management that is the in-demand skill set, right? Companies in various industries, you mentioned healthcare, financial, technical, they're increasingly using skills-based hiring to fill these open roles. And in fact, LinkedIn recently cited that project management as one of the top 10 skills companies need most. And this is a huge opportunity for project professionals and even those who don't self-identify as project managers. I think that's the point there. Sometimes you don't call yourself a project manager, but when you look at the tasks that you do, the deliverables and the skill sets that you're using, maybe it is time for us to look at as well. Is it truly this type of role, or is it really a project manager role? So there's some education that needs to happen there too.
Yeah, really well said. It's about the skills. And we talk about the skills in project management, but it's really the project management skills that organizations need themselves. We sharpen ours through the triangle, but that's a really good point. Again, it's the talent gap. It's the skills gap around this that causes change. And I think that's where organizations need us, particularly if they continue to flatten their hierarchy because they have increasingly powerful tools to use where they don't need so many people doing those types of jobs. It will be important for us to help with that adaptation. Now, if that's true, and there's a gap, in theory, someone who can do that gap, let's take it down to the WIFM, what's in it for me? There's some ka-ching in there, I believe. We've seen the trends go up generally. I don't know if project management's outgrown other white collar professionals or knowledge workers, I think they called it back when I was starting. What's the story on, you guys do a salary survey, it always looks pretty robust, but how much in demand are we really needed when I'm talking to my banker? What do I got?
That's a very important question because I think, let me do a step back too. It's not just that the salary survey, it's the fact that research has shown that 91% of hiring managers, they view certification as an important criterion for hiring. So the certified PMs earn more money in the job market, and that's what was covered in the recent PMI salary survey. In fact, this is our 13th edition of the salary survey. And I believe we had about 20,000 respondents from 21 countries that were part of this survey. And one of the key findings is that respondents with a PMP certification, they report higher median salaries than those without. 33% higher on average across the 21 countries surveyed. And in North America, clearly US and Canada are part of that. And then the median salary of a project manager in the US is $120,000, but the respondents with a PMP certification, median salary is $130K. So what that just tells you is, of course, it's showing that value is placed on those demonstrated skill sets, and that project management truly is a future-proof career. There's a need for the talent, and therefore, this is another way for, project managers to look into it as a long-term career.
Well, and I think they want to because of that change in the salary, as you were saying. Do we have any idea about the sense of people's relative authority within organizations? Do we have this idea of promotion paths? Has there been any study on that in terms of the trends in the profession? Are we rising, or are we consolidating space? Is there some measure of what it means to be an effective project manager within an organization?
The salary survey did not cover that, but it
Right.
showed like 8 different um, job titles, from project manager one all the way to director of
I see.
project management. Because typically we have two typical career paths would be your individual contributor, and then the second path would be you could be a manager of project managers. That was not covered in the survey, but I can tell you, at least in my experience, I think there is definitely an opportunity there where, as you grow into the profession and keep honing your skills in project management and gaining the experience, there's definitely an opportunity there to keep moving into a leadership role. So something to look out for, and something that we are actually discussing within PMI. If there's a path there to an executive role, even, right? Because I think we have a lot of project managers that have a lot of experience, and sometimes they turn from practitioner into executives.
I think that'd be interesting to follow up on. I know in some conversations I've had, going back a few years with the podcast that I host or have traditionally hosted, one of the things that came up a lot was, in the end, we won't be able to produce an environment. It was posited that we would not be able to produce an environment that is fundamentally conducive to good project management, hygiene, and health. Like, good project managers exist, but we always run across, well, but my executives don't let me, but we don't, but we run into this and we run into that, and there's not enough, if you will, throughput, right? So it was until we start seeing executives who are coming from the project space. So often our executives come from an MBA space. They will come from the very specific industry, whatever that took. You will see people coming from the CFO space that become the CEOs. There's a lot of space, but we don't see a lot traditionally and typically project managers getting into that space. And I think it's because it's a different skill set in large part.
Mm-hmm.
But the theory was we will start seeing better, friendlier oceans to swim in, right? Warmer seas to be in, when there are executives who are like, no, this is how I got good. Was because I thought this way. I did things this way. What do you think about that? Is that the only thing we're going to need? Are we going to see more of it? Is PMI going to help me become an executive, or anyone else listening?
I can and speak about that, because it has been my own personal journey. Like, I went from operations and project management, and who would have thought that I would be in PMI, right? I think one thing to mention too is I came from the community. I was a practitioner. I am a PMP, and I was a chapter leader, just like you guys. I volunteered in the community, and that's where I actually found a sense of belonging in that community, where I could talk to people that speak the same language, trying to solve the same problems as I have. And and I could tell you that in my journey, what I've learned is that in my role today as regional managing director, I have used many skills that I've acquired from my project management career. Case in point, as a project manager, I would work with our finance partner, making sure that we are tracking benefits realization, and we are within budget, and if we're seeing any risks, we have mitigation plans, and that financial acumen really helped me in my career, whether I was in operations, project management, and here now as an executive for PMI. And I'm not the only one. Our chief of staff, Lenka, she has a very lengthy career in project management. We have another vice president, Olivier, that's also from the community, and Ricardo Triana, also from the community, and a PMI fellow. That just tells you that there is a future there, using the same skill sets that you acquire as a project manager, that those power skills, the collaborative leadership and problem solving and strategic mindset, that comes into play when you're reaching for an executive role.
So executive roles, possibly various industries that we can be in, this idea of increased salary. And your story tells me one other thing that I haven't had to face, or I had the opportunity to face in the same way. I suspect that one of the values from a trend that I have seen is I have seen many people who are of coming from different countries, as in first generation immigrants. And also when I have been overseas, seeing people in those countries from different countries. So when I worked in Malaysia and when I worked in Jordan, seeing people from all around the world who are doing this through the project management lens. I suspect another trend that we can see with project management that I feel proud about is it doesn't only focus in one industry. And although cultures are different as you enter them to do work, it is not inherently culture bound. Maybe very, very deeply it is in some ways, but mostly it gives access. You don't have to know something special about a kind of industry or a place only. We need to learn these skills, which you just talked about, the strategic thinking, and it focuses on that in the communication. It actually had another value besides just salary for you or others, right? It literally gave you access to markets. You went to, you said Latin America? Like, is that where you went? Yeah. It gives us access to other markets and to other places literally around the globe. And I think that's something that's very powerful about the profession to me. How does PMI address that, or do they address that? How do they look at that?
And you see that trend even in North America. And just looking at the chapter leaders, for example, that we have about 1,400 chapter leaders across North America. You see a lot of, our leaders coming from different countries, precisely to your point, Kendall, because the profession is not bound by a particular culture or a particular industry. Just wanted to mention again that, I was in the banking industry at the start of my profession, my project management profession in Asia Pacific, and then into Latin America. And then I went to healthcare. I think that shows that the skills that you acquire through the profession could potentially be industry agnostic, right? And culture agnostic. I think that that's the beauty of the profession, because we need to be experts, not necessarily in a particular industry, but we need to be experts in project management. And I think that's why when I try to have a conversation about how to become a project manager or how to become a successful project manager, I think that, again, the talent triangle plays a really good role in making sure you're balancing those skills as you go through your profession and your career. And I think one thing to mention too is that PMI, we have over 300 chapters all over the world. And we have PMPs all over the world. And we have 700,000 members from over 100 countries. And so that just shows also the diversity and also the mix of culture, background, and experiences that benefit from the project management profession. So there is definite diversity within PMI, and that's why we also try to support our regions and understand the nuances between the regions. So you will find that as I am the RMD for North America, there is one for each of the sub-regions that we have. We have a total of 7.
So that actually reminds me of something. I don't know if you have the statistics at your fingertips here, but where is project management fastest growing in terms of PMI's membership, or where it's seeing testing or certification processes? Where is the largest change, even if it's a smaller area? Where are you seeing the percentage shift?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I think 2 of the areas that are growing would be Sub-Saharan Africa and Asia Pacific. North America is actually the most mature region. I mean, PMI even started in Philadelphia, right, in Pennsylvania. So even if the market is smaller in Asia Pacific and Sub-Saharan Africa, there is really a large growth happening in those markets. I think the emerging markets is where the growth is happening.
Well, those are pretty broad geographic areas. I guess I wasn't thinking of all of Asia Pacific as even emerging markets anymore. So you mean like island spaces? What are we actually saying there? Is it Southeast Asia? What specifically are we looking at there? Do you know? What's causing that?
Right. Yeah. I mean, we have our markets in Korea and Japan, and I'm not familiar with the rest of the countries that are really fast. I think Indonesia. There's the third one that I will mention. Those are the areas where we're seeing growth. But for sub-Saharan Africa, there's that one I'm not familiar with which particular country, but in terms of a region as a
Yeah.
whole, those are the two areas where we're seeing growth.
We might find that we might have the opportunity to get back to or to the Philippines or Indonesia with our skill sets as markets mature and grow.
Absolutely.
Gives us all the
Absolutely. I mean,
access.
you can. I wish that I had found the community back in the Philippines when I was a project manager, but I didn't actually. Back in 2005, and it wasn't until I came to the U.S. that I found the PMI community here, the project management community, and that's where I thought, well, where have you been my whole life? I had been practicing for 15 years at that point. And then my director asked me, why aren't you a PMP? And I thought to myself, you're right. Why am I not? And so I took the exam and and became one. But that's not just a single story that's unique to me. We hear a lot of our project professionals or project managers that have been in the industry, that have been, practicing these skills and going to different organizations, but it's the community that provides that support, that mentoring, and even that sense of belonging that I mentioned earlier, where, oh yeah, there's a bunch of PMPs here. What is the value of that certification, right? Like, there's a sense of pride in taking that PMP, and I'm so glad that I found that community here in South Dakota. And somebody had just asked me that question. You've been a project manager for so long. Why haven't you taken the PMP yet?
I think there are more people in the DC chapter than there are people in South Dakota. I'm surprised you
That's
found
absolutely right.
There's not a lot of people up there.
Nope, but we are a thriving chapter. I know we're not as big as Southern Maryland, but I can tell you that even in South Dakota with 300 members, it's a tight knit community. We have
That's
a very
large
strong
community
mentorship
today.
program.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, actually,
And there's a mentorship program available.
I was going to save that for the end because that's less about the trend of the profession, perhaps. But let's talk about that. PMI's role in helping, because we have some other questions to cover in this trend area, but PMI's role in helping promote the trend and support the trend, it is a community. And I think that's what we're talking to tonight, right? So there is the professional side, but there's also the chapter side, the volunteer side, the membership side. Mm-hmm. And many of the people listening tonight or watching this later will be people who are part of the community that Harry is representing through Southern Maryland and through the other chapters. What do you see as the role of PMI in that trend? And I know you guys are getting ready to do some new strategy, which is coming out in, I guess, March, right? PMI is kind of going to expose their strategy to the leadership. And you can tell us a little bit about the timing of that. But there's a strategy that our institute must have that helps promote us to being in this trend. And the membership side cares about that affinity, that education, the mentoring, the connectedness, I think. So how are we seeing this from a PMI perspective as you look forward, in terms of what you can share?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think I want to take us back a little bit to the impact of the pandemic, right? The pandemic and that subsequent shift to remote work. That was tough on a lot of people. But it was tough for project professionals because as project managers, we're so used to staying connected and managing many stakeholders and removing that in-person connections was very challenging. And that's where I feel the PMI community, that's where that lack of meaningful connection, that's where we come into play. Through our global community, through our chapter community, that's the foundation for a place of belonging for the profession. And in our passionate local chapters, like Southern Maryland or the South Dakota chapter and 152 more within North America, it's a safe place where professionals can find their people and they can be themselves and make real connections and get the support and resources that they need throughout their career. And so I'm going to touch on now a little bit on what we're about to unveil in terms of the strategy. So we talked about the skills,
guys, you heard
the
it here
talent.
First. Tantalizing drips of tea coming at us. Go, go, go.
Well, Here's a little teaser. I will share with you an overview of the strategy. But you're right. I'm going to mention a couple of dates for you guys to note of where to hear it more and know more broadly about our strategy. But so PMI right now, it's an exciting time for PMI and the profession. So we're rolling out this 2024 strategy, which is really a collaborative effort between not just the PMI's leadership team, the board of directors, who, by the way, are volunteers. We have volunteer insight teams, employees, and of course, the input of the profession. So what problems are we trying to solve, right? And to best serve our community, we need to provide a clear path guided by this unified purpose and strengthened with a new strategy. So our strategy is called PMI Next. And I want to start off with our purpose and why we exist in the first place. And that is truly because we maximize project success to elevate our world. And the world, we know, needs more projects, and that's why we need more project managers. And for them to succeed, we need the project professionals that would drive those critical implementations. So there are 3 strategic pillars. And if you are connected with me on LinkedIn, I actually shared that one page. So that's the extent of I can share right now.
Right.
Is the strategy pillars that we have. So there are 3 focused areas where we can have the greatest impact to the community by leveraging our strengths. So number 1 would be to leverage the unique strength of our community of experts, including you guys, by expanding our community-generated knowledge platforms and resources. So a good example of that, and a recent example of that, is actually the 2 things on AI. The generative AI overview, that webinar that we have, which is free for the members and you can earn 5 PDUs, that one was co-created with community members. And then the Infinity tool that recently came out, that was also tested by thousands and thousands of community members. You know, our community has a lot of years of experience and knowledge. Why not partner with the community on that? So that's the first part of our strategic pillars. Second one, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I think he's just
great.
showing you the chat bot, giving you some background.
All right, excellent. That's great. And I wish I had found this when I was still studying by PMP. So this is great. I'm glad that you're showing that. That is an exclusive member benefit now. It used to be free, but now it's just a member benefit. So that's one way of showing that we are working with the community and leveraging the knowledge of the community and coming up with tools and resources. So the second part of our strategic pillars is about career-long learning and development. So it's leveraging our unique ability to engage and support project professionals, not just at the beginning, but throughout their career. And this is either directly or through our chapters and our ecosystem and expanding our learning and development experiences throughout the career stages. And a recent demonstration of that, if you're following PMI, is the acquisition of PMO-GA or PMO Global Alliance. And as I mentioned it earlier, that we have project managers, practitioners, but some of them take a path of being PMO project managers or managers of project managers. So the acquisition of PMO-GA actually is really a demonstration of how we can continue that career learning support for our members and our practitioners. Another one that I wanted to mention is that Project Managers Without Borders is joining the PMI family. I think we have released a statement around that as well, and this will help us expand our impact and provide inspiring development opportunities, not only for our current project professionals, but also our aspiring project professionals. So that's the second pillar of our strategy. And lastly, the third pillar is the protecting and further developing our unique position as the leading authority for the profession by investing and fully supporting our most trusted gold standard professional certifications. An example of that is the PMP. So here's a teaser for those that are listening. The annual Pulse of the Profession report, that's going to come out in a few weeks. But I'm going to share something with the audience right now. In that report, in the 2024 report, we have found a compelling evidence that suggests organizations can provide flexibility and empowerment to their project professionals' work location without worrying it will hurt project execution and performance. So stay tuned and look for that Pulse of the Profession that's coming out before the end of the month. And you can read more about how organizations need to support, again, the project professionals in capability building to drive project performance.
That would be so very important to have that piece of information, because I do not believe that is true for all the professions, nor should it be necessarily. That's a whole debate. But that we can deliver that way, and that we've known we have for a while. I've known people doing follow the sun project management for years. But that's understood and has data behind it is killer, because it means don't look at me, we can still deliver. It also means we should be learning these skills, because that's how we can deliver from anywhere. So that will be very, very important. I look forward to seeing that and hearing more about that. You opened up a lot of things there to help to talk about there. And I've got some other questions, but I want to jump on something you said there. This idea of the learning and development throughout the career, but really trying to help everyone develop. We have some questions and concerns from the audience often, and certainly tonight as well, which is this role about what happens when you're young? What happens when everyone seems to be saying we want experience, which we know has to happen. I mean, that's what we all went through as we built our career. Unless you're an entrepreneur where you're breaking the mold on something, to follow in a career is to follow in a career. And yet, what are the opportunities for PMI to help us accelerate that? Or what is it that we need to be learning? Should we as PMs be operating differently? It is something to have people who have it in their DNA or have it by their training, who want to get started in it. What do we see as a trend to help them there? Or what is it that PMI can help us do there? Or what should we be thinking about there?
Yeah, no, that's it. That's a really important question, and one that I've heard actually when I do community events. And one of the questions that I'm being asked is like, how do I even transition or enter into the profession? Right? I think that's a legit question. And one thing that I can share is that's why PMP is not the only certification that we have. As you know, we have CAPM, which is a great entry point into the profession, which doesn't require the experience. And yet, of course, it requires education hours. That's fast becoming a certification to be watched. And that spike in the demand for CAPM, we're starting to see that as well in organizations hiring project professionals. So that's one thing to look out for. Maybe you don't have the 3 years of experience yet to vie for a PMP. Well, don't fret. There's another opportunity for you. And plus, certifications are not the only way to keep improving your skills, right? That's why PMI focuses on learning solutions. All these webinars and articles and, PDU generating information and training sessions that we provide. Those are really good tools to supplement your learning, because it's not just a linear path. And I believe you can speak to that, Kendall. You just don't go one way, you keep studying, and then all of a sudden you have this good role, right? You got to complement that with experience and with continuous learning or career-long learning as part of your journey. And then the key thing to note, too, is that there's the community. I think that's what the chapter brings to the table, that local connection. People that are either in the same industry or in the same job or, having the same issues as you are. And in some chapters even offer, again, a mentorship program or even just a networking, just to be out there and know what's out there in your community. leverage that and take advantage of that. And I'm seeing there's a gap actually in terms of membership. There's a lot of members that are not realizing that there is a local chapter, right? It's your local connection, and it's your tribe, it's your people within your community that you can lean on. And that would be an awful miss if we're not capitalizing on what's already out there in the community and seeing the benefits of the chapter.
That opens the door for my own personal experience to share with that, I think. So I'll step into a guest role for a moment. I think you're onto something there. Yesterday, when I was young, as the song goes, I remember myself thinking, I don't know if this works for everybody else, but I took lateral positions. It wasn't always about a promotion, because I needed to get there's a lot of values to it, but one of them is that you simply get experience in a slightly different or tangential way. And that sometimes looks spicier. You want 3 years in one thing, or 2 years plus 1 year in budget. I spent time in a budget shop, and it was not my thing. It continues to not be my thing, but I needed it on my resume. And I learned from it, right? Okay, now I got that. Yeah, whatever. Now I know, right? I think that's one thing I would suggest to people is this idea of lateral. I would speak to the young professionals that way. If you have your CAPM or PMP, which means you have some level of experience, I mean, there's nothing that can be done but to learn more and to experience more, because one of the best ways to understand the way we can perform is, have we ever performed before? So I think trying to find out how a new job looks adjacent to what I've done in the past helps show that. So that's my recommendation for people. And one way to have more opportunities to show the job you're looking for looks similar to what I've done in these ways is if you've had lateral jobs. And I think so many people will not take a lateral move because it's not a promotion. And I have observed that is problematic for people. I think that's really valuable to try and focus on that. That's one. Two, one things that we've pushed, and it probably doesn't play as strongly, but I think it's real. The volunteer service, specifically around pro bono projects, is one. And I obviously am motivated thinking there because I founded a nonprofit for it. And we have people who do those events. And Harry helps run some of that too with the continuous value delivery that he's been supporting. We're looking to see that even grow over time. But more broadly, there are a lot of opportunities to take your skills into a pro bono space where you can offer your services and get credit for it. Now, it doesn't work often in the same way as having a job title, but it does lead to real learning and specific, who are we kidding, right? Words you can put on a resume, right? You can still do things. You talked about a safe space with the chapters. One of the things we feel is that we're offering safe space for people to try things differently. You may never have been in this role, but you can in a pro bono. By extension, I'm going to go one farther. As a chapter leader, many times a serial chapter leader, and certainly respect all my many peers who've been in that role and suffer those chapter roles. Being a chapter volunteer is another direct way to do it. It may not be directly in the community that you live in, but it's certainly in the community of your discipline. And I believe that was one of the most valuable things I did for me personally. I don't know that I was never I was a owner of a company, so it didn't drive my career in the same way in terms of position titles. But one of the most important things I ever did in my career was to become a volunteer in the chapter, because I did things that I do not do in my regular job with people who thought differently than the people who were employing me or who were my peers in my regular job. And so, I ended up in marketing communications, which I'm really bad at still. But the point was I was accountable to try and help that out with my chapter. And I had to participate and show up in a different way. And so you find you get to exercise new muscles and different muscles. And I think that relationship can help get you past the gatekeepers in an organization if you happen to get with a big enough chapter or a chapter that's as connected as yours are. But I think you also learn new skills, and you might even pick up a title or some verbs like also executed a budget, or whatever, even if it's a chapter budget. I believe that our chapters themselves offer the opportunity for learning and growth as being managers of chapters. Well, volunteers, workers in the chapters, and then a manager of the chapter, and then perhaps even an executive of a chapter, which I think you had a chapter position as well, did you not?
I did. And that's why I kept nodding, because I couldn't agree with you more. When I first came here and became a member, the first thing I did was volunteer. But
Yeah.
my initial thought was like, I wanted to connect with the community, right? I wanted to know who are the other project managers within the community. That was my own personal objective from the beginning. And I thought that if I give my time, my personal time, and share my talents, and I was the VP of programs, so I was in charge of putting
There you go.
together the professional development day and, educational programs for the chapter. So I can understand all the sweat and tears that come into volunteering. But you know what? At the end of it, I felt like I gave more. I thought I gave more, but actually the volunteering gave back so much more to me. The
Yeah.
connections that I've made, the mentors, actually invaluable mentors within the community that I would not have met if I wasn't in that role, knocking on doors, asking if they would like to be a speaker on our program, and inviting them to talk about the profession or to talk about, their experiences, etc. But the connections were invaluable, and I always tell my team, and even I told my two sons, every person you meet is a connection. You just
Yep.
don't know when
Yep.
it's going to happen, right? And
Yep.
there's value to that. And if you don't put yourself out there in the community, how else are you going to make those connections? And so that's going to be my little advice or tip for those that are listening, or to those that may have not been involved in the chapter. I think be a member, be with your people, but at the same time, volunteer your time, because learning is not just linear. Like, there's so many ways to learn and so many ways to gather new experiences. And you might not be working with numbers or marketing, but in that role, because you're volunteering, you get exposed, as you mentioned earlier, you get exposed to these things. I don't know anything about social media marketing and all that, but because I was programs, I needed to understand how it was being marketed. And so I partnered with our marketing person, our marketing volunteer, and just gave me the basics, the ABCs of marketing. But now in my role, actually, that's what I needed to learn. I needed to understand our audience. Who are we serving anyway? And so, absolutely right with when volunteering, you get so much more actually than what you give, because of the connections that you make, the experiences that you get, and sometimes
I
those connections are lasting connections.
I think one of the other advantages that I have personally seen, I just rolled off the board and I had done it 8 years before. I will say this: I believe our profession has become more open to more people. And I don't know that the profession was closed, but people can come to this profession in a way that maybe others are still not as open. And I wish for everyone that they feel comfortable in this profession, in this discipline. People who traditionally not been in these roles, but that does take me to something that you had mentioned to me before. What is PMI looking at in trends in terms of women in the workforce, or women in PMI, or women as members, or women as professionals? I don't
Mm-hmm.
know what the cut is, and women are not a minority; they are the majority, actually. But in our
Mm-hmm.
field, what is it that we're seeing in terms of relationship with women? I have observed more since I became a member and walked into meetings in 2005. I am observing more kinds and different people than look like or
Mm-hmm.
have had history like mine. And I
Yeah,
think that's
I
true
would
when I
echo
look at
that.
board. But what are we seeing from a PMI perspective in terms of a trend, either in the profession or in the membership?
Yeah, I would echo that based on my own experience, but I will tell you that our recent research found that there are still more male project managers than female.
Really?
It's still a 3 to 1. Yes, it is still a three to
That big,
one,
three to
and
one.
yes,
Interesting. Why
and
do you
and
think that's
while there are
true?
far and while there are far fewer women in the workforce, they are only slightly less likely than men to have a leadership role. 20% women versus 23% men. So not much of a gap, but in terms of actual, project managers in the field, it's still a 3 to 1 ratio. And even in the median salary, we're seeing a difference. and of a female project manager, regardless of certification status, it's still 107K for females versus 127K for males. But what
So
I will
where's
say
PMI
though is
landing on
that
this? Where's PMI? How's PMI going to help us with this? There's a trend, and you guys are our institute. I assume you're our advocates.
yes,
What's
of
going
course.
on here?
Of course. And this is why PMI has brought diversity, equity, and inclusion together with our culture, right? It's to better align and promote those efforts within PMI and across our community. Because having diverse project teams, we know there is a research there that 88% of project professionals say that having these diverse project teams increases value. And that's why PMI, again, has brought D&I. We have employee resource groups. And one of them is a women's ERG, actually. And lastly, we have a global partnership.
ERG. Hold it. ERG, tell me more. That was an acronym.
It was an employee resource group.
There we go.
It's an employee-led interest group. Yep, we have our own, and that's to create an inclusive and equitable workplace. So an example of that is a women's ERG within PMI. But outside of that, we do have a global partnership with Women of Project Management. And I don't know if you've heard that. Asia Watkins is the CEO of that. It's a dedicated global community for women in the profession, and with a goal of really further amplifying women's voices in project management and enabling more female project managers to enter and progress into the profession. And last year during the Global Summit, we had a screening of their documentary. So if you have a chance to look into WOPM, which is Women of Project Management, look into that, because it was a very powerful moment where they talk about Beyond the Glass Ceiling. That was a documentary about women project managers that really has shown these skills and competence and have evolved in their profession and turned into leaders into the community. So we are seeing that. We are seeing chapters celebrating International Women's Day and highlighting the importance of women in the profession. And like I said, I can't express this enough, but there are chapter mentoring programs where women can connect with other women project managers and discuss the experiences and obstacles that they might be facing. And in my own experience, like you, Kendall, I saw in 2005 actually is where my team was 70-30, 70 male, 30 female. But in 2019, when I joined healthcare, it became a 50-50 split, but sometimes it would still be a little bit more on the male side, on the female side. But I think what's important is that if the organization that you're working for is really supporting, DE&I or diversity, equity, and inclusion, and promoting female project managers within the profession. Yep,
well,
that is Asia Watkins. So this is the partnership.
Yeah, we just pulled that up so they could show that there for you. Well, we've managed to go all the way to the end of our time without getting into AI, which actually kind of makes me happy a little bit. But I will say this, PMI has rolled out its own chat support or its own co-pilot in that space, or a supporting thing. And one of the best things I heard recently is that AI won't replace PMs, but it will eliminate PMs who don't know how to use AI. So I appreciate that Project Management Institute tried to get out ahead of that, both with its certification as well as some tools that we can begin to use. I would anticipate that to only go faster than we can even learn. But is there anything specific, as we sign off in 60 seconds, what you want to talk about from PMI and the AI perspective, from the Institute's perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. And we want to be at the cutting edge and making sure that we support the community, right? It's an evolving space, and it's faster than any other technology. So watch out for more learning courses and additional tools to come from PMI. So PMI Infinity, our co-pilot, and then the PMP simulator, that's just the beginning. But that is definitely something that will come out in the next few months here. and making it a member benefit as well, making sure that we are equipping our project professionals with the tools to be better, faster at their jobs, right? And to your point, Kendall, it's about really understanding AI is not going to replace the project manager. The big P in PM is people, right? So
Yeah.
project managers are the ones that are managing the people and leading the people, connecting the people. So that AI will not replace project managers, but how we view it in PMI is that it is a co-pilot. You finally have a buddy, a partner that can and help you get the answers faster.
Well, I like what you said, better and faster, but not cheaper. That salary survey. We're still looking for that there. Okay, guys, my PM Arati here. There you have it. We ain't dead yet. The sky's the limit. She just took us home with that one. But while you dream your dreams, build your skills, pile up on that cash that Karla talked about there, remember to get PDUs so you can keep your cert, because we know that you want to keep that cert and maybe get other ones. So with that, I'm going to say thank you, Karla, for your time tonight and for like the different things you can share. And I'm going to turn it back over to Harry's goodly mercies to tell us how, as I sign off tonight, that you can get PDUs or a PDU.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, Karla, and thank you, Kendall, for hosting again the show. Great show. It was really very interesting. Just a quick announcement that we have our next True Talk show coming up on Tuesday, March 5th at 7 o'clock time, and we'll be inviting a couple members from the PMI Phoenix, Arizona chapter to talk about their successes and what they did to become recognized last year by PMI for their efforts. Again, as Kendall mentioned, don't forget to submit your PMI claim for tonight. And we thank you and have a great evening.